So a couple of developments here at Good Natured World headquarters. One, tech support puppy decided he wanted to chew on my hat, so the safest place is to put on my head. So tonight's show I'll be wearing a hat. And two, there's a squeaky toy that appeared here in the office, and he's found it, and I can't get it away from him. So we might have random squeaks is the program tonight.
That's great.
He's just out of reach too. I can't quite get it from him. Here, buddy. Can I hit it? Oh, no. Well, anyway, there may be some extra sound effects tonight.
That's great.
And you know what? Looks like just about everybody's logged on, so I think we'll go ahead.
Your link said 5 o'clock, so I thought maybe I'd missed it. I guess that was just a.
Oh.
Yeah.
I wonder, maybe that's it. Maybe it did that when that was about the time I sent.
Time you put it on? Yeah, yeah. It's okay.
Decided.
I figured you hadn't changed it, but just was kind of interesting. I'm just glad to see you. Very good.
Well, I need to pay more attention to those kind of things, Mary. Thanks.
No problem. I'm just glad you're here.
All right, well, we'll get going with our usual beginning. That'll give, we got a couple more people I think expected tonight. So if you had a chance to read last week's column, it was all about flying squirrels. And full disclosure, that was actually an updated version of a column I'd written, gosh, I think it was 9 years ago. But the squirrels, the flying squirrels are still at Norris Woods. And if anything, their numbers have gone up a little bit in this area. I hear from a few people every year. And usually the emails take, or phone calls take one of two paths. One is, I saw this thing at my bird feeder and I don't know what it is. And it's always after dark. Sometimes it's like in the middle of the night. And it turns out to be a flying squirrel. And the other one is, I've got flying squirrels in my attic. How do I get rid of them? These guys are rodents. And so they chew like rodents do. They reproduce, although they're not like mice. They can't have as many litters as mice do, but they are actually doing pretty well, or what appears to be pretty well here in Kane County. They are actually the southern flying species we have here. And I found that was a little bit interesting because a lot of times when we have a species here that's either northern or southern, we have the northern variety. And but southern flying squirrels are what we mean squirrels. Northern Illinois, and they are stinking cute. Smaller than our other tree squirrels. I would say their body length is probably about the same as a chipmunk, but you can see by this picture they are chunkier than a chipmunk, and they've got that fluffy tail, which serves them well because unlike a chipmunk that kind of the winter off, chipmunks will go down underground and they store up a lot of food underneath the ground, and they are marginally active down there, but they do spend a lot of time in a state of what we call torpor, where they're not terribly active, and they'll bundle themselves up in leaves and other nest material. These guys, just like our other tree squirrels, our fox squirrels and our gray squirrels that have a big bushy tail, flying squirrels have their thick tail too for wrapping up like a blanket. It functions sometimes like an umbrella. They also use it for balance when they're hopping around in the trees. So they're neat, and you can tell, look at the size of that eye. It's quite a bit larger than what we would see in a fox squirrel or a gray squirrel, or diurnal squirrel species. These guys being so heavily nocturnal, that larger eye is going to let more light in, and it's going to enable them to see just a little bit better when they're out there in the middle of the night. Now, talk about an amazing coincidence. So that article, I always have to turn things in a week ahead of time. So let's see, last Thursday would have been the 22nd. On October 16th, we have trail cams set up out in the natural area at Hickory Knolls. And what do our wondering eyes do appear but flying squirrels? We'll watch it again. There he goes up the tree and off to the side. And this time he actually flung himself, herself, whichever, right at the camera. See if I can stop this mid-flight. Kind of see how they spring. And then flying squirrels have a flap of skin. It's kind of like a cape that runs between their forelegs and their hind legs. And that enables them to stay it's not a powered flight like we see in a bird or in bats. Bats are actually the only flying mammals we have. But they are able to soar pretty good distances, and it enables them to get access to places like our bird feeders that would otherwise be considered. So when people say they don't know what's getting into their bird feeder, and they think that they've often squirrel-proofed it to a point where nothing but birds is able to get to it. A lot of times it turns out to be a flying squirrel that's feasting on those seeds overnight. Their habitat, they're not going to be in every neighborhood, but your chances of having flying squirrels are going to increase if you've got mature and usually nut-bearing trees. They love to be around oaks. Oaks, A, supply acorns, and B, a lot of times oaks will have some pretty neat nooks and crannies and tree cavities, which is where these guys will try to hunker down. And they also have a fondness for bird houses if they can find one where they can fit through. I know I've had friends who have done bluebird trail monitoring and have found instead of bluebirds in their bluebird houses, they found flying squirrels. So that's about the size of the hole that they need. You know, when we first moved into Hickory Knolls, that was in 2011. Right behind the nature center, there was an oak tree, and it had a small cavity, probably had been opened up originally by a woodpecker. And we were all excited because honeybees had moved into that tree cavity. So we had kind of a ready-made bee display right outside the building. Well, that winter I was out, we actually had quite a bit of snow that winter, and I was out behind the building and I saw a lot of honeycomb stretched out on the ground, spread out. I thought, uh-oh, something has gotten in there, something small enough to fit in that hole. And then a couple days later, I was there at night and happened to catch a glimpse of something disappearing inside of that hole, and it was a flying squirrel. Now, I don't know if they were the ones to evict the bees. I don't know exactly what the sequence of events was, but they did end up having what was probably kind of a cool and probably honey-scented sort of a hideaway there in one of the oak trees right behind the nature center. So the other weird coincidence that came along with writing about flying squirrels was from our designer, Jacqueline Mulligan. She's the one who puts she puts the Good Natured column on our Hickory Knolls website, which is stcnature.org. And she said, she emailed me as she was posting the story, and she said, did you see this? And I said, I did not. A flying squirrel trafficking ring down in Florida. And I thought, Florida. These things always happen down in Florida. Turns out there was a group of people who were illegally trapping flying squirrels and shipping them to South Korea, where they were sold in the pet trade. They estimated that they had as many as 10,000 traps throughout central Florida, and they caught 3,600 flying squirrels in 3 years. And then they were then marketed to people as being bred in captivity, even though they weren't. So long story short, these people got in big trouble, but look at this. This is how they were keeping these animals. They had a wholesale value of over $200,000, and the retail value would have been over $1 million. So that just kind of blew my mind, and this just happened last week too. It's a very recent story. It also reminded me of something I'd read in National Geographic last year, and I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but also in Florida, there's this these who trap songbirds, and the songbirds I have quite a bit of value. Well, now the flying squirrels, they were
Wait till you taste your dessert.
the
She's talking about flying squirrels. That may be the problem with the squirrels that get into our, yeah, they're more aggressive about getting into the bird food. You can't really keep them out of the bird food.
The painted bunting, which is the species up here on the top, the indigo bunting, the rose-breasted grosbeak. These are just a few of the species that were, and I think they're still being trapped. The wildlife officers down in Florida, they've really got their hands full because they've got, they've got all the giant snakes that are roaming around eating things, and they've got the flying squirrel trappers, and then these songbird trappers. So these songbirds, some of them are sold as pets. You can see the painted bunting is just beautiful. But they're also used to compete in songbird contests. The males are the more highly prized, and I think that might be the only ones that are being trapped are the males. The males are typically the sex that will sing to declare or defend a territory. And there'll be these contests that are held for who has, I don't know if it's the best song or the longest song, and people can win quite a bit of money doing this. Now this is not in South Korea. This is actually tied more to the Cuban culture. So a real hot spot for songbird trapping is down around Miami. Of course, it has nothing to do with flying squirrels, but it does have to do with Florida and wild things that should not be being trapped or being trapped. Hopefully, this is a little bit harder to track down because it is so, there's a lot of independent trappers out there. That flying squirrel group was sort of acting as a large ring, I believe, of trappers. These guys are a little bit more secretive about it, and the wildlife officers have to go undercover sometimes to try and track down these trappers. But some of them put cages out with a number of the species in it, and then when the male flies in to check it out, then they catch him as well in another trap. Sometimes they use mist nets, which is really bad because then they're just catching anything that flies. So anyway, just something to be aware of and something to watch for developments on. Hopefully that songbird trapping gets under control down there in Florida. So let's go on a little road trip. A couple of weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, I met my friend Tricia down here in, you can see we've got all these cities around North America. And then we've got Siloam Springs State Park, which is actually in Western Illinois. This is cut out of a satellite view. If you can put your geography hats on for a second, over here on the left would be Hannibal, Missouri, and up here a little bit to the east would be Springfield. A town called Jacksonville is over here. This is actually a little town called Mount Sterling. So we're talking south, west, central Illinois, still in the 217 area code, so it's not that far south. It's about maybe 4.5 hours from St. Charles in Kane County, but it's 3,300 acre state park, and it's a really cool place. It's this big green area right here in the center of the map. There's, I'm certain the lake that's there was caused by damming up something, but there was just a tiny little creek that fed into it. So, oh boy. I don't know exactly what the history of the lake is there. Poker. And there's some areas that have been sectioned off for deer hunting. There's camping in different areas throughout the area, throughout the campground. But there's some really cool wildlife too. This is the lake. Hey, come here, buddy. And this is an example of my wildlife photography. Can everybody see that little black dot right there? Got that? Let's zoom in on it. There it is. And then I'm going to drop in a picture that I did not take so you can see what this actually was. It was an osprey. Hold on just a minute. I'm going to close the door here. Osprey have been gone from our area now for some time, but there's still a few hanging out down in west central Illinois. And this guy would come out and cruise above the lake there. There's a fair amount of fishing that goes on there. It's stocked with a lot of game fish. There's bass and some of the panfish, crappies and bluegills and things. I didn't actually get to see him catch a fish, but it was pretty cool to watch him soaring up above there. Osprey, you can tell the difference between an osprey and an eagle. One by the lighter undercarriage part, but as you know, some of our immature eagles can get kind of a mottled look to them. You want to look at the wings of the bird that you see soaring above water. If they've got a bend in them, right here and right here, that's going to be one of the giveaways. The other one, if you get a good look at the head, you'll see that it's got a stripe, almost like a robber mask across the eye. Those are all good signs to look for so that you can tell that you're looking at an osprey and not an eagle. So another cool thing about Siloam Springs is that it's not too far from Griggsville. And if any of you are birders and fancy the species, the purple martin, you might recognize Griggsville as the purple martin capital of the nation. This is beautiful downtown Griggsville. You can see they've got a billboard here that says America's Most Wanted Bird. They're the purple martin capital of the nation is what their water tower says. And they've got this 500 and some apartment purple martin complex right there in the town. It's not really the town square. It's kind of like the town parkway that's downtown there. There was a fella named Jesse Wade, J.L. Wade, and he's been called the P.T. Barnum of purple martins. He actually had a manufacturing business down in Griggsville and made aluminum antennas. Well, he started pushing purple martins, and he realized he could retool his factory to make purple martin houses out of metal. And he just started this whole promotional campaign about purple martins eating mosquitoes. In fact, the bottom part, this was on a Sunday and there was a football game in the parking lot. This is a bar right here. The parking lot was full of pickup trucks, but it says that these birds can eat 2,000 mosquitoes a day. Well, they could if they flew low or the mosquitoes flew really high. And if there wasn't anything else to eat, they could indeed eat 2,000 mosquitoes a day. The thing is, purple martins tend to eat a lot of other bugs, just the same way mosquitoes can be consumed by, or bats could be consumed by mosquitoes. No. Bats could consume mosquitoes, and they could eat, several hundred if that was all there was to eat. But bats, as we know, we learned a couple of weeks ago, they can eat moths, they can eat beetles, they eat a lot of things besides mosquitoes. Well, purple martins, they do the same thing. They eat a lot of beetles, they eat a lot of moths. They actually also eat a lot of dragonflies, which actually do eat mosquitoes. But all that stuff aside, Griggsville does have purple martin houses throughout the town, in addition to this giant complex downtown. What I'm not so sure they have anymore is purple martins. I talked to a couple of people who've been there recently in the summertime, and the purple martins don't seem to be coming there in the numbers that they once did. Now, Griggsville and Siloam Springs, it's a little distance from the Illinois River and a little distance from the Mississippi River. I'm sure that there is a good population of flying insects, and would certainly, people might benefit from having more purple martins there. But it sounds as though the numbers that the town once used to see have not been recorded recently. Now, whether that's because the birds have changed their behavior or the people have changed theirs, I don't know. Purple martin, keeping a purple martin house or maintaining a colony is a lot of work. Those houses need to be cleaned frequently. They need to be winterized. They need to be prepped in the springtime for the arrival of the birds. You need to watch out for starlings. You need to watch out for house sparrows. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into it. You might know, if you've been to Hickory Knolls, that we have a purple martin. We've got 3 apartments now that serve maybe 2 dozen or so pairs of purple martins every year. These birds spend the winter down in South America, down by Brazil, and then they come back up and are only here for a brief time. They're one of the earliest birds to leave. Usually by the end of July, they're gone, having arrived in May. So they're not here for a very long time, but they make good use of their time while they're here. They raise a brood, and then without ever having made that trip before, their offspring follow their fly down south all the way to South America. So they are a really amazing bird. And but the hype, like I said, J.L. Wade, he was the P.T. Barnum of purple martins. He really knew how to promote the birds, but he didn't always get too troubled or bogged down with facts. His Nature House brand of purple martin products is now sold in Chicago. Irva Tool and Die bought out the Nature House brand. I believe it was in the mid 2000s. J.L. Wade died, I think, in the early 2000s. I might be wrong about that. But anyway, he's not around anymore. Yeah, you can buy the Nature House purple martin houses in Chicago. That's actually where we buy all of our parts from for the colonies that are at Hickory Knolls. We have a wonderful volunteer named Mike Swanson who knows exactly what's needed to keep those birds happy and healthy and coming back year after year. If you ever want a treat, come by on a warm summer day. You'll probably run into Mike visiting the purple martin colonies at Hickory Knolls, working in the houses. He keeps meticulous records of the number of eggs that are laid and the number of chicks that are hatched and the number of birds that actually fledge. And he has those records going back over 20 years. Anyway, that's another reason to visit Siloam Springs. Now, I'm going to play a sound for you. This was something that we heard pretty much as soon as we woke up on Saturday morning. And I was listening to this, and I couldn't quite figure it out because it sounds kind of like a mammal, doesn't it? I kept thinking some kind of tree squirrel. It sort of reminded me of some of the chattering that red squirrels make, but red squirrels aren't present in that part of Illinois. They're a more northern species. And I thought, no, you know what? It's got to be a bird. And there was the giveaway. That is actually a chatter call that red-headed woodpeckers make when they are around other redheads. And this went on every day. You'd hear them chattering back and forth, kind of giving each other. I don't know if that's a contact call that's comforting or if that's a, hey, back off, this is my oak tree and these are my acorns. I couldn't quite decipher the behavior because there was quite a bit of back and forth. There was, gosh, one time I counted 4 red-headed woodpeckers in 2 trees chattering back and forth. And it was neat because that was the woodpecker species. I did see a flicker one time when we were out driving, but whereas up here we see downies and red-bellied woodpeckers. We'll occasionally see a hairy woodpecker or a flicker, or very, very occasionally a red-headed woodpecker. Down there, they were just everywhere. It was so cool. Now, why don't we see red-headed woodpeckers around here that often? Well, I did a little digging and I found out that they're a species in decline. Their numbers have gone down over 70% in just a little over 50 years. And there's a few reasons behind that. One, the eastern part of the United States, we've cut down a lot of trees. We're working on putting them back, but some of the old trees that were really, productive here's a beech tree and beech nuts and our oak trees and our acorns. And then this is an American chestnut tree. And, we've lost just about all of our American chestnuts due to that chestnut blight. So they've lost some of the habitat and the foods that they used to thrive on. They also have another requirement for nesting in, they prefer to nest in a dead tree, or at least a tree that's got a good portion of dead branches on it. And what we do with a dead tree around here, this is actually over at Norris Woods. Last winter, you get a dead tree, you gotta take it down. In the park district, I know a lot of times we're kind of mandated to take down dead trees because they present a safety hazard. Now, if they're in a natural area and they're not anywhere near a trail, we try to let them go as long as possible. And sometimes they do then come down on their own. But having that dead wood is really important for species like red-headed woodpeckers. They also, rather than thick woods like this, they actually prefer to nest in communities we call savannas, where there's quite a bit of spacing in between the trees, which are typically oak trees or bur oak trees even, if you want to get more specific. This is Bluff Spring Fen up in Elgin. And I've seen red-headed woodpeckers there pretty frequently when I go. Unfortunately, I don't get up to Bluff Spring Fen all that often, but every time I've been there, I've seen them. So it's a good spot to check them out. Now, McCullough Park down in Aurora, this is the park that is adjacent it surrounds the Prisco Center at Lake Street, which down there is what they call Route 31, and Illinois Avenue. McCullough Park, you can see is groomed for picnicking. They've got a pavilion here where people get married a lot. But look at what is growing there. It's widely spaced oak trees. So even though we don't have the prairie plants underneath the way you would in a natural savanna, this has created a savanna-like sort of a ecosystem there. And back when I used to work in Aurora at the Fox Valley Park District, I remember seeing red-headed woodpeckers at McCullough Park. In fact, one time I even saw them. They had little junior redhead. The offspring had fledged, and the parents were teaching them how to strip open acorns out on a telephone pole on Illinois Avenue. So this, even though it doesn't look like a natural community, has actually been fairly productive for red-headed woodpeckers. So keep that in mind. Look for them again next spring. Now, this was a phone call I received just a couple days ago on Sunday morning. I want you to listen to it. And I want you to see what comes, just think about what comes to mind from the description.
Pam, I'm not hearing a thing.
No.
Yeah, I can't hear it either.
Okay, hold on.
Can't hear it either.
Oh, all right. Well, that's no good. Okay, I'll give you the gist of it. That's too bad because he's such an engaging. So this is a pastor of a church, and he's down in Batavia on Wenmouth Road. It's Ascension Lutheran Church. He called me at 8 o'clock Sunday morning, and he said that there was a little owl outside of their front door. And he said it just was kind of sitting there, and he wasn't sure what to do about it. So he said he hoped I got this message in time, and if the owl needs help, he gave me the address of the church. So I got the message, I guess, a little bit after 9, and I called him back. I don't know, maybe they're doing like Zoom service or something. Anyway, I didn't talk to him then until about 11. And he said that the owl had moved on. It wasn't there anymore. And they looked all around. They're pretty sure it flew away. So, and they did find kind of a little owl print on the door. So clearly this thing had crashed into the glass of the door of the church, but seemed to be fine and had flown away. So a small owl that crashed into a window. Anybody want to guess what kind of owl it might be?
Saw it.
Oh, is that you, Shara?
Yes.
You are correct.
He's so cute.
I was so surprised. It seemed a little early for them. So the saw-whet owl is a species that we don't see here year-round. They come down here in the wintertime and hang out. Usually people kind of find them by accident. They're looking for something else, and then there'll be this tiny little owl. And then these are small. They're maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches. And when I talked to the pastor on the phone, he described, he said it had a round little face. He said it didn't have any ears. So, of course, we all know that the tufts that poke out from the top of an owl's head, whether it's a great horned owl or a long-eared owl or even a screech owl, we know that those are feather tufts, aren't actually ears. But he said this had a round little head. Well, around here, and we've got barred owls, but they're not small. They don't have the ear tufts, feather tufts on top of their head. And then our short-eared owls have tiny little tufts, but they're not really due here yet either. And they're not as small as the saw-whet owl. So anyway, when I talked to him at 11, he said, you know what, we snapped a picture of it when we found it this morning. So he sent this over. Here it was, sitting right in front of the church. I went over, I did a little investigating here. This is eBirds maps, and it kind of shows, this is relative abundance, post-breeding migration. So this is September through December. You can see it's not unheard of to see them around here, but there are heavier concentrations in other parts of the country. And it was just kind of a cool surprise to find out there's one here already. I also looked over on Fermilab's website, and I tell you, I go to this website all the time. If you Google Fermilab birds, you'll get the first 2 responses you get. One is the bird list, and the other is their recent sightings. This is a neat way to confirm something. If you think you're seeing something, but you're not sure it's possible, check Fermilab. They have, between birders on staff at Fermilab that go out on their lunch hours or before work or after work, and their volunteers that go out and monitor, they have a really comprehensive and a very lengthy list now of birds that have occurred on their property. This is the sort of information that they provide. You can also link to the Patuxent website, that's where all the bird banding data is kept too, but you can really learn a lot about a species by taking advantage of those links as well. But the Fermilab people create these timelines that shows by blocks of time, was that 5-year blocks, what when the birds have been sighted. And these go back all the way to the 80s. And you can see the saw-whet is unexpected on site. And the last time it was seen was during the 2017 Christmas bird count. So again, Google Fermilab, because it's a kind of a lengthy address. I didn't put the whole address on here, but if you Google Fermilab birds, you can check out what you're seeing to see if anybody else is seeing it. So I don't know if this bird will make its way over to Fermi or not, or if maybe it's on its way somewhere else. But there's at least one saw-whet owl in King County, or there was at least on Sunday. Now, this is the other rare bird sighting. Did anybody hear about this? I know Bob and Kathy, I know you were on it. The American avocet. You can see it's in a marsh. It was actually in Brayburn Marsh, which is the marsh right there on Randall Road. I'm not sure who spotted it first, but lo and behold, this bird that is considered very unusual for this area was there waiting around. Check this out, this bill that it has, it curves up, and when they go foraging, they stick the bill in the water and they shake, 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 shake back and forth, and they stir up their food. This bird is in its non-breeding plumage right now. When they are breeding, they get kind of a brownish cast to the head. It was a really, really neat find. Here's what eBird has to say about their post-breeding migration. And you can see now, before with the saw-whet, there were, shading and dots in the northern Illinois portion of the map. But the avocet really isn't to be expected here. It's not likely at all that you'll see it. And Fermilab confirms that too. Their last sighting was in 2013. So, and this is kind of displaying a little bit larger than I wanted to. You can't see the bird's summer plumage, but it's a very cool bird, something that I don't know if it's still there or not. I suspect not, but this is just a kind of a general reminder. When you think you've seen it all, it never hurts to just give another look. You don't know what's going to be appearing sometimes without warning. There was another unusual bird that I didn't make a slide for that was, of all places, at a retention pond right at Peck and Campton Hills Road, a waterfowl called a black scoter that showed up. There was a ramble for that. King County Audubon went there yesterday, and I don't know, Bob and Kathy, if you're listening in, if there was any luck in finding that black scoter on Monday. But you could be going along and you're just thinking you're seeing the usual, Canada geese and mallard ducks, and then lo and behold, something really amazing shows up. Now, I'm gonna take us off of the slideshow here for a minute. Share. Back? All right, there we are. So I wanted to ask you all if any of you were able to watch, Northern King County Wild Ones did a program. They were supposed to have done it back in April with an interview, a Zoomcast with a gentleman named Doug Tallamy. Does that name ring a bell with anybody? Silvana, you're raising your hand. Did you jump onto the native plant bandwagon?
I saw the whole presentation and actually contacted the wild ones afterwards because it was so fantastic.
Yeah.
The way he was talking about all the caterpillars and the plants that he was putting, and his whole presentation was just great.
It's been on my mind quite a bit. So Doug Tallamy, he's written a couple of books. His first one I was aware of anyway, is called Bringing Nature Home. And his latest one is, I believe it's Nature's Last Hope.
Yeah, I'll bring it. I have
Do you
it.
have it? Well, so Dr. Tallamy is he's got a really cool idea. And, we all look at our national parks as refuges of nature. We can go, and see the Grand Canyon, or we can go to Yellowstone and we can see the geysers and we can see the bison, and they've got a wolf pack there. There it is. Silvana's holding it up. Best hope, not last hope. Much more.
Nature's best hope.
Nature's best hope.
It's really, really good.
Well, so, the idea of setting aside large chunks of land as national parks is good on one hand because it's being preserved. But on the other hand, it's kind of separating that life, that the animal life and the plant life, and then you have to go and visit it, and it's not really part of your daily life. Dr. Tallamy has some really amazing figures about how much land here in the United States is held privately, and how much of that privately owned land is basically just lawn. Turf grass is not something that really supports a great diversity of life. And what Dr. Tallamy is saying is that if we could just each one of us devote a small portion of our yards to native plants, we can create like the next national park by connecting, if each one of us were to put a little bit of our yard into natives, we could make this national park that goes from coast to coast and really do a lot to help our wildlife and our ourselves, because it's suddenly the national park that we have to make huge plan. We have to get on a waiting list if we want to stay in the park. We got to wait in line sometimes to get in there. We can actually have a little touch of that right in our own yards. I was excited after I saw, and I believe. Oh, Kim, you're here. Kim, do you know if that, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm pretty sure if you didn't get to see Dr. Tallamy's presentation, that you can access it online. In fact, I'm sure if you go to YouTube and you look up Doug Tallamy, and that's Tallamy, you can listen to some of his talks, whether it's the one Wild Ones showed or not.
Yeah, you can. I mean, he has a lot of different things online that you can.
Okay.
I'm not sure
Okay.
about if you can get that last one, but you can certainly see a lot of his presentations.
Okay. Yeah, well, he talks, like you mentioned, Silvana, about how many species of caterpillars, different types of trees support, and white oak trees are far and above the largest, have the largest number of caterpillars, something like 500 in some species of caterpillars. And you think about, oh, okay, so why do I want more caterpillars? Well, caterpillars are the #1 food that most birds use to feed their young. Caterpillars are, they're squishy and soft, they're easy to digest, there's a lot of protein, and birds that you normally see at your feeder, like chickadees eating seeds, they need those caterpillars to feed their young. So if you don't have anything that supports those species in your yard, you can't expect to see much of them. I know sometimes I'll be talking to someone and they'll say, I just don't have any birds in my yard. And I'll do the usual questions about, well, do you have a cat? that you let walk, or is there a neighborhood cat that prowls around, or maybe you have a hawk in your yard, and no, I don't have anything like that. But then it turns out they don't have really any landscape either. They've got the perfect lawn without any weeds, and they might have some rose bushes or something like that. But the idea of planting, not so much for what you want to see in terms of color or scent, but something that is actually going to have benefits to the wildlife. It's a really, really cool idea, and I hope is going to start getting more traction and catching on more. As we're talking about this, I'm looking at this on my desk. You probably recognize it as a milkweed pod. We have it here, and I don't know if any of the fluff has gone by me as we've been talking, but I'd heard from a woman who's just recently moved. She's downsized, and she's living in a senior community now, and she doesn't have a yard anymore, but she wants to maintain her connection with native plants. So she's going to start some milkweed and grow it in a pot on her balcony, so she can hopefully have some monarch butterflies next year. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have acres and acres of yard, just even just a small, as Dr. Tallamy showed in his slideshow, just a small little fenced off area is sufficient to support some native plants. And you're going to start to see all those different types of insects, which then attract different types of birds, and you get that whole cycle started.
He actually, one of the things that blew my mind when I was listening to him, he was talking about this woman that lived by O'Hare Airport that had a small little space for a yard, or to put plants. And he was saying that this woman was able to have these caterpillars in her little potted plants that he had been waiting for many years in his 10-acre property. And that to me was like really impossible, but he did. And so he was just saying anybody can do it. And when he said anybody can do it, I took it to heart.
You're gonna go for it. Yeah, well, I don't have what I consider to be it's certainly not a big yard by any means. It's very small, and the soil isn't that great. I've been working on it over the years. But I would say probably, well, it started, what it started with when I pulled out the honeysuckle bushes in the backyard, and I needed to still have some screening. My neighbors had a hot tub, and I don't know what would go on over there, but I didn't want to see it. So I needed something that was going to grow quickly. And I chose elderberry, and the elderberry has brought, because it's first of all, it gets the big umbels of blooms. So I get all kinds of native bees coming to it in the springtime, in the early summer. And then as those blooms turn into berries, then we start getting a lot of birds. Every year since it started producing fruit, it took maybe 2 or 3 years. It grew quickly, but it took maybe 2 to 3 years before it started producing fruit. I started getting catbird nesting in the elderberry, and every year I've had catbirds ever since in the backyard. And catbirds are they're so fun to listen to because they mimic lots of other bird sounds, and it's fun to sit out on the deck and listen to the catbird, and you try to pick out, there was a little bit of robin song, and just did a cardinal song, and it's very enriching to have that. And after the elderberry, then I started looking around at other places in the yard that I could drop in different types of natives. I got a little bit more sun in the front yard, so that's where my milkweed is. Mountain mint is another thing. I've added some of the goldenrods, not the tall goldenrod, but the showy goldenrod and the stiff goldenrod. I actually had some zigzag goldenrod, which is a woodland species, pop up uninvited, but certainly welcome, but I didn't plant it underneath some of my trees in the backyard. And from there, then I saw this owlet caterpillar, which is bizarre, about 2 inches long, and it had a red stripe down its back, and then some blue, and then like zebra stripes on the sides. It was really, really cool looking, and something I would not have had had I just put in the usual annuals like impatiens or begonias, things that are pretty and they can certainly add some color. And it doesn't, not to say that you can't have those, because they're going to continually flower, whereas some of our native species are a little bit more constrained in their bloom times. But get those native species in there, and you'll really be surprised at what starts to show up. So I will stop with my commercial for natives for now, but I'm sure it's going to come up again and again, because I'm really hoping that Dr. Tallamy's movement is going to catch on. It's good for the planet, and it's good for the planet. It's going to be good for all of us. Does anybody have any questions or anything tonight?
I saw the woman that was in Doug Tallamy's broadcast that Sylvana just mentioned.
Oh, uh-huh.
The one by O'Hare. I have a feeling she's done, she's presented and stuff. And I don't know, but I'm thinking possibly she could be found on the internet.
We saw her speak last winter,
Yes, we did.
and
But do you
lots
remember
of
her
pictures
name?
of her yard.
I don't remember her name, but I just am wondering if she wouldn't be somehow, because she advocates for this. This is her big thing. So I'm wondering if she would be on the internet in some way.
Oh, let's see. Oh, I'll ask the Google.
You're faster than I am.
No, I'm not. Yep. Hold
Native.
on. Backyard bulrushes. Christine DeLong. Sound familiar?
Could be. I'm the worst person in the world on names.
Hold on. No. Here we go. He told the story of Chicago resident Pam Carlson
Oh, yeah.
with a K, who
Carlson.
has created a bird sanctuary in her small yard, a half a block north of Chicago's Kennedy Expressway and directly adjacent to one of the runways at O'Hare International Airport. And then, so yeah, Pam Carlson with a K is the one. And then she lists his tips of shrinking your lawn, mow neat strips of traditional lawn grass to show the property is well cared for against a backdrop of more colorful and natural plantings. Remove invasive species, plant keystone plants like those oaks we were talking about, and be generous with your plantings. If you have one tree in your yard, consider adding two more. You would be planting groves of trees at the same density at which they occur naturally in a forest. It may seem crowded at first, but they will interlock their roots and support one another in high winds. And then network with your neighbors. So get other people on board too.
She was very impressive.
Yeah,
I do remember that.
yeah.
I just looked it up. She spoke at Wild Things last year. I knew
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of wild things, so that's that's kind of the major conference for nature nerds throughout the Chicago region that normally takes place. I think it's the second weekend in February. Anyway, going in for 2021 is a Wild Things year. It happens every other year. So the 2021 Wild Things is going to be held on every Saturday. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be held on Saturdays in February. This came up because we're trying to plan our frog monitoring trainings for 2021, and if every Saturday is going to be taken up by Wild Things topic, it's going to make it kind of tough to get all those virtual trainings done too. But there's not a slated, they're right now they're still doing their call for presenters, and they haven't firmed up those who's speaking on what days and what the topics are going to be. But something to keep in mind as we get rid of 2020, hopefully for good. Move into the new year. Wild Things will be on Saturdays in February. So mark your calendars for that too. Any other questions or comments?
I was wondering if you have seen that Netflix documentary called Kiss the Ground.
I have not, no.
Okay, well, I just saw it because somebody in one of my classes was talking about it. And basically the whole thing that they were putting out there was how the soil was so wonderful to heal the earth, and what we needed to do to take care of the soil as a way to combat climate change and pollution and many other bad things. But one of the things, it almost goes with the Nature's Best Hope with Doug Tallamy, because he says, like native plants, and he talks about having a diversity of plants to enrich the soil, not the monoculture and things like that. So I just thought it was really interesting, and I would like, if you get to see it, would like to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah, I will. I don't have Netflix, but I know people who do. I'll see if they'll talk me into, or let me talk them into watching it.
Just bring the popcorn.
Yeah, there's a book, and Kim, I'll throw your name out there again. I know you read The Soil Will Save Us.
Oh yeah, wonderful book.
And so, yeah, The Soil Will Save Us is another look. And, soil, when you talk about, nature that's not regarded highly by anyone or not appreciated by a lot of people, I mean, what we scrape off our shoes before we go in the house. But it's soil, and there's so many different types of soil, and the life that's within the soil, it takes so many different forms depending on whether it's in a prairie or a woods or a wetland, and it's something that I think really does hold the key to our future. If we make sure we take care of it properly. But it's like nobody, it's a 4-letter word. Nobody really gives it a second thought, except for those few soil scientists that are out there.
Well, as Lisa O'Brien says, dirt is soil that's out of place. So it's a whole different thing.
That's
Soil
right.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Any other comments?
Yeah, Pam, hi, it's Diane.
Yeah, hey, Diane.
I'm going to try and share this with you. I found this with my grandson. I live part-time in Shorewood, Wisconsin, and we were at the park, and we found this fungi, and I'm going to try and bring it up here. Let's see if I can get it for you. Come on, picture. Wait a minute. There it is.
Ooh, that's a chicken of the woods.
It is chicken of the woods. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was that jack-o'-lantern you had told us about.
Yeah, no, that's a chicken of the woods. See how it's got the lighter margins?
Yep.
And I don't.
The picture's not doing justice because it was very orange.
Yeah. Was it at the base? Do you know what kind of tree it was on?
I don't. And we went back to look for it, and we couldn't find it. It was gone.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. Now that I know what it was, I'm upset with myself.
Well, it is a mushroom that people they recommend having a small portion to start with, just to make sure your system, because some people have an intolerance to it. And then if it's growing on a conifer, a pine, a spruce, a fir, don't eat it because it absorbs terpenes and things that would be toxic to us that are present in the resins of those plants.
I'm pretty sure it was on a deciduous. It was
Okay.
along the Milwaukee River.
Okay.
We were walking along the river, and I'm pretty sure that it was a deciduous. But I at the time I was so excited to see the fungi that I didn't
Yeah.
look at the tree.
That's a great find. And
Yeah.
In fact, I've still got hen of the woods in my freezer. And my coworker Ryan Solomon, I prefer hen of the woods over chicken of the woods. He prefers chicken over hen. He says the texture is very much like a white, like the breast meat of a chicken, white breast meat. So yeah, very cool find.
Okay, great.
Somebody else found it too.
There's a as I said, I live part-time up there to help my daughter with the kids, and there's a park right across from the senior apartment that I live in, and it's called Estabrook Park, and it's along the Milwaukee River, and I'm finding all kinds of things there. I love it.
Awesome. Well, keep bringing pictures. I love
Okay, well, will do.
it. Thanks, Diane.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Let's see. If not, I'll just quickly throw up our, see if we can get down here to the end. Our next week's lineup is, there we go. Don't you love technology? So we'll do a little spiel. Some of you are intimately acquainted with the Kane County Certified Naturalist Program. For some of the others of you, though, it might be some news. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with KCCN and what we've got coming up for 2021. We're going to talk about witness trees, which are a really cool phenomenon throughout Illinois, but some neat developments going on with these very ancient trees with a story to tell in the Chicagoland region. We're going to talk about deer ticks. Got some fun emails we're going to take a look at, and who knows what'll transpire over the next 7 days. But with that, I'm going to stop the share one last time. And thank you all for spending your Tuesday night with us, and look forward to seeing you all back next week.
Thank you. See you next week.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great week.
Thank you, Pam.
Bye, Greg. Bye, Kelly.